Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video, and today it's time to go into the woods. That's right, we're going to continue the Armies on Parade series and we're going to talk about Sylvaneth. Let's get into it.
The strict technomancer that is Vincey V. Let us get to the technique and learn it Vincey V style.
Back in Warhammer Fantasy Battles days, I had a Wood Elf army. I was actually just building it mostly up when, well, the world exploded. So, hey. And shortly after AOS launched, when they brought out the entire new Sylvaneth range, I fell in love and expanded the army. So let's just jump right in. I want to start showing you some things and talking about this army and telling you what's different about it than most other army projects I did. The first thing to talk about here is that you'll notice these figs are very differently painted. And that is because I didn't want to do one color scheme. Instead, my army is separated into sort of 3 different color schemes, each based on the leader in question. I didn't want to do seasons. I felt a lot of people had done that. Instead, I wanted 3 more different vibes or themes based on what sort of big tree was meant to be leading them around. So let's start with the angriest part of the forest, the Spirit of Durthu part. So for this, we'll start with the Dryads. And I wanted them to be cold, dead, dark. Now, one of the fun things about this army, I'll tell you right now, and it's true throughout almost the entire thing, is it was done through repeated steps of dry brushing and washing or glazing, with then some extra texture put in with layers and hashing and scratching at the end. So that was really, really fun to do. I like Dryads. Animated tree people are cool. So this was my Dryads. And this is where you see the scheme, the dark gray-black wood, bluish type, or those kinds of things in the leaves, and so on. And that's really expressed even more here in this next unit. Now, this next unit is where I'm being a little sneaky. The fact is, I didn't like that they had Dryads and then they had tree revs and stuff like that. I kind of wanted to mix the two. So throughout the army, I just grabbed bits. I grabbed different Sylvaneth bits, but also old Wood Elf bits, also things like Dark Elf, even like just elf bits everywhere. Elfy bits and creatures and things like that. And in fact, when I made this unit of 2 tree revs, I made them so if I wanted to, they could also just act as 10 more Dryads and I could have a full unit. So they kind of pulled dual purpose, where I'd give them like 1 woody hand and 1 blade hand or whatever. I wanted them to be able to be whatever unit I thought was most apropos. So I ended up doing that. Again, you can see how this one was a lot of fun. This is actually the first scheme I started with. These are all under the Spirit of Durthu, so this is like the angriest, coldest, deadest, fire-burnt, whatever part of the woods. And so the blades are all this kind of orange-yellow, very warm tones, whereas everything else is blue and cold and dead. From there, let's get straight into the Kurnoth in this particular army. And that's just it. Like, I have the whole hierarchy going up. You'll see this repeat a couple times. My Kurnoth, these are with swords. And again, same thing. The Kurnoth was actually the first unit I painted as the test unit in this scheme, because they were kind of big and gave me the opportunity to work. But it's that dark gray black. There's actually some brown in there. A lot of this was done through like repeated washes of Agrax and then Nuln Oil and stuff like that. So just literally like heavy washes, heavy dry brushing, and then picking out the details. It was such a relaxing, fun army to do. Because it shows that you don't need to use, I think, like ultra high level techniques to have what I think is ultimately a pretty good looking army. Like to this day, I'm still quite proud of how this army came out. I think the sword guys look cool, but of course that brings us to the big boss, which is the Spirit of Durthu himself. I really love Tree Lords in general. I have like lots of Tree Lords. You're going to see some of them in this video. I have a couple others that look basically just like these. I really did enjoy doing the big Tree Lords. And that kind of Oakenbrow, heavy Monster Mash, hero heavy Sylvaneth, frankly, I don't know. It's always appealed to me. It's what I love. I love the idea of like, I always loved Treants and Ents originally and Hurons and stuff from Lord of the Rings, which is what got me into fantasy. So the big giant walking trees I always thought was just the coolest thing. So with that one behind, let's go over to our next section. And this one I wanted to be a little more, almost, again, feeling a little more springery, summery, alivey, that kind of thing. But this is the part under the normal tree lords. So I saw this as like the strong core center of the army. So this one uses a lot more of like a range of different colors, much warmer woods, as well as things like more natural greens and blues and stuff like that in the water. More of just like what I would think of as kind of traditional summertime Sylvaneth colors. Again, I didn't really want to focus on seasons, but you can use those as inspiration all the same. You'll notice that like back on the winter people, all their leaves and stuff were like dead fall, brown, orange, stuff like that to further build the color scheme, whereas here everything is very alive and colorful. So this is a unit of tree revs. I really sort of like these. I like the kind of, again, I wanted them to feel very much alive in contrast to the last one. So the wood is much warmer and more brown. The hairs and things like that is more green. And then the blue weapons to sort of show the magical elements of the thing. The tree rev that's kind of in the back right, standing up with the big swoopy hair, was really fun to make. Again, I think I even included a bunch of Slaanesh bits in here you'll see throughout. I really just went nuts converting these. Like every one of these tree revs and dryads was sort of lovingly converted from what I thought I could, just any bits that seemed to fit and be appropriate. That brings me to this next group of 10, which again I could use as like another small group of dryads if I wanted, or they could be 2 groups of 5 tree revs or spite revs or whatever. And these guys, again, each one, you'll see the conversions happening kind of throughout the whole thing. It's just, this is how it's built up. I really liked tree revs and what they did, so I thought I'll invest heavily into them and make a whole bunch of them or dryads. In the long run, that has turned out to be not the best investment in Sylvaneth, as things have gone always more towards like big Kurnoth blocks, or now the new Bug Riders, which never really spoke to me, sadly. But that's okay. That we can still have the army we love. Next up in this scheme is the actual Kurnoth in the regular Tree Lord section of the army. And that is, I really like these guys with their scythes. I do love the scythes. I just always thought the scythes looked really cool. But they were super fun to paint. I really love Kurnoth and just painting them. I think they're one of the more like fun, interesting figs to paint that GW's made in a long time. Because again, you can, all these guys, just to reinforce it, dry brush, wash, dry brush, wash, dry brush, wash, minor layering details for hashing and scratching is basically what was the technique for all of these guys. And I still think they came out pretty cool looking. So overall, the Scythe Kurnoth pretty happy with, and that brings me to my heavily converted Tree Lord. There's not really a good way to take a picture of this guy. He's sort of like running with his foot bounding up against a rock, and he's like heavily pinned in there. It seemed like a better idea at the time. I don't think I really repositioned this guy very well. He looks cool on the tabletop, but he is impossible to get a good picture of because he's kind of like leaning to the side, striding forward. It's just, he's in a weird pose, and frankly, I don't think I did a very good job with it. But he has the spear that he has is the old Spear of Orion or whatever. I just wanted to give kind of that shout out to my previous Wood Elf army that I was like, still building up when everything in fantasy came crashing down. The bigger bases were also fun because I really got to play with more forest scenes. You'll notice throughout this that there's a lot of like rocks and running pools and ponds and rills and stuff like that. I did enjoy just playing with different water effects and different sort of nature-y scenes as I was building the bases. And so I really like the bigger bases. And, one of the questions you may ask here is, doesn't this army look disjointed on the table? And my honest answer is no, it doesn't. Because nature is not aligned in some way. I think we often get too obsessed with making every figure in our army look identical, when in fact in, real armies and certainly in nature or things like this, there would be variance. There just would. Not everything in the army got up, like the trees didn't wake up and put on a uniform. They didn't all decide to grow with the exact same colors. And so I do want to encourage you that like it can be a real interesting thing to explore in your army, to have units or models or types of models or whatever that have different color schemes that you explore different compositions with, it can make the army look almost more cohesive, more credible, more realistic in a way, especially when they're all together. The uniformity of like these are Dryads and these are Kurnoth, it will work. People can see that, but that they just happen to be different because they have some different role or purpose or whatever. In this case, they just have different flowers growing on them. So at any rate, experiment on your own. Don't ever feel like you're in a cage and you have to paint everything in your army the same color. Let wherever your imagination takes you is the right answer. So last up is the section of my army under Drycha. So this is the turquoise and pink section of the army. Again, there's more to it than what I'm showing here. I've got some more Spite Revenants I didn't show here, but we'll begin with a couple of, just because I've showed you so many Tree Revs and Spite Revs, I really have a lot of them. Couple of characters. Again, one of these is like the Reaper Dryad, which I thought was cool, and then the other one is the classic sort of Branch Witch. Really like both of them and thought they were, sort of very fun, as it were. It was fun to just kind of paint a different thing. This is one of the first places I discovered my innate love of kind of turquoise, greenish colors, teals, and pinks, magentas. Like that general space and color combination, I think really came to the fore for the first time here, and frankly, I've never looked back. Next up is my Bow Kurnoth. They're part of Drycha's group, so again, I do think this is my favorite color scheme of the whole thing. I really do love the combination of these two tones, and I think on the Bow Kurnoth they look really nice. Although I do think going back it would be fun to do some Scythe Kurnoth in this scheme, so maybe something for the future if I ever return to this army. Last up is my Tree Lord Ancient, my Spellcaster. Again, I assembled this one pretty stock, pretty standard, though I always played with the different bits and dangles and jangles that are hanging off of him. This is my favorite Tree Lord as far as how it came out. I just really like the way the sort of warm bark works with the cold greens and magentas. I think he has the best kind of balance. Little like things like his tummy fresh growth of the inner wood and his face and things like that all just really sort of work for me. I put a bunch of extra little life like bloom sticks in the end of his staff wand there. I had a bunch of extra Tree Lord bits, so I just kind of, if you bought multiple Tree Lords, you have extra of the ancient staff. So I just cut off a bunch of extra of the tiny little blooms that are coming out and stuck them all in there. Again, this was so fun to build this guy, to build sort of the scene he's a part of, to have these little rivers and rills and creeks and things in there. The rocks, by the way, are all indoor bark. I've talked about those in a couple of videos. They really do make for great in-scale sort of rocky clusters, and I really like them as far as stuff like that goes. All right, so we still have two important figures left. First off is this lady right here. I love this. I haven't done many of the new Sylvaneth figs, but as soon as she came out, I knew I wanted to use her. I think she's awesome. I did her somewhat in the Drycha scheme, just because a little bit as far as like her vines and life goes. She seemed like she was angry in the story, so I thought, okay, she belongs with Drycha. So that is relevant, I suppose. And then, but that's how she came out. And then, of course, we need Drycha herself. And Drycha herself is here. Now, I never liked the actual Drycha fig. A quick note about that. I have I don't remember what the name of it is, tryptophobia or whatever. I can't look at those circles. I can't, like, close circles and stuff like that. Drives me crazy. In fact, just mentioning it right now, my skin is starting to crawl. But at any rate, I can't paint or use the actual Drycha figure. Those like beehive things she has trip that fear off. And so, so I had this model. This was from, gosh, whatever Creature Caster was way back in the day before they were a Creature Caster. They had this tree lady. And I just thought it was like the coolest figure, and so that's my Drycha. I just put her on the right size base. And I really love this fig. I just thought it was a classic. Something about the nature of the face, the way it's sort of coming forth out of the the rest of the tree and the nature. It just really, I thought was cool. So I had this fig for a while before I did this army, and I was just kind of like looking for a use for it, and then it clicked in my head. So this is my Drycha, has been for quite a many years. It's a shame this figure is out of print, but if you like it and you could find an old out of print one, you know, it's worth a pickup. It's very easy to put together, and it's actually a really wonderful paint. She's just a very cool fig, so yeah, check it out. But, of course, no Sylvaneth army would be complete without the main star of the show, Alarielle. My Alarielle is, again, very different. I didn't like her just standing on the bug, so I wanted to have her waking the bug up. So I built this whole giant crazy base to be like the beetle's cave that it's coming up out of, and she's sort of on top of it, standing there, issuing forth. I also didn't like her little tree arm or whatever, so I replaced that with like some kind of high elf magic-y wand arm, which I liked better. So yeah, my Alarielle is, you can see her here. Obviously there's I built a whole tree. That's like an actual tree I did out of twisted wire and milliput and stuff, and then put, you know, flock and things on. And then, you know, obviously I built the cave completely out of cork and milliput and other stuff like that. I didn't hide the cork here as well as I liked. You know, this army was done back in 2017, I think. So it's been a while. And there are a lot of things about this I would change today. But all in all, I think the beetle came out looking pretty cool. I do feel like it's neat that he's sort of emerging from his cave, that whole thing is there. Alarielle is, again, I do feel like I got the sort of essence of what I was going for, that she's issuing forth the beetle, waking it up from its slumber or whatever, and it's kind of going forward. The composition is fine with I actually like the composition with the beetle kind of going off one direction and the tree the other direction with her in the middle. So I think that came out all right, but I would have done better hiding more of the cork and building things out to be a little more natural. I probably would have put in more water elements into this, had a little more of like some waterfalls or things like that happening if I was doing it again today. I probably would have done a little bit more color variance on the beetle itself. I think he's a little too green. Like, he's got a lot of stuff going on, but that was a lot of back and forth airbrush work, and I think I could have worked outside of just the sort of green, yellow, orange, red spectrum. I think I could have also worked in a little more aggressively the blues and purples and stuff like that. Really gotten the whole Skittles rainbow in there. But this was really fun to paint. I loved this Alarielle. I'm proud of what she is. I think she still looks pretty good years later. Certainly I think I could do a better job, but all in all, this is, you know, an army I'm still pretty proud of. So that's my Sylvaneth. Like I said, I wanted to share this army with you for a couple of reasons. First, this army was done almost completely, as I said, with just dry brushes and washes. Now, obviously, Alarielle was a lot more work than that. She was a pretty serious project. But so much of it was done in that way. And it wasn't complicated. It didn't require a lot of high-level techniques. And I really wanted to share it with you because I think people can often get caught up that, you know, they can't get an army that looks good because they don't know the sort of high-level painting techniques necessary to achieve it. And I just don't think that's true. Even with very simple techniques, if you find the right army that you are interested in painting and love, you really can create a project that you'll be proud of for years to come and that looks amazing and impressive on the tabletop. The other reason I really wanted to share this one is because I do want to break people out of the prison that every figure in the army has to somehow look identical. These figures used bits from probably 7 different armies in them. They're painted differently, though with themes all throughout, completely different, wildly different color schemes, right? And yet they still completely feel coherent and credible and appropriate on the table. And so I think you can do that as well. Have detachments, contingents, whole sections of your army, whatever, that happen to be different colors because of whatever story is in your mind. Don't be shackled to the prison of painting the same thing over and over and over and over again. You can always experiment, break out, and make things fun in the ways that you want to do so. It's your army. Paint it how you want. So with that, I'll say thank you so much. Give this a like if you liked it. Subscribe for new hobby cheating. We have new videos here every Saturday. We'll be back to techniques and such next week. As always, if you want to support the channel, lots of ways you can do so. Down below, you'll find links to all your hobby supplies, my lights, my brushes, everything I paint with is all down there. Doesn't cost you anything extra. In fact, it usually saves you money, and it really does help support the channel. So hit those affiliate links. You can also find the games that Uncle Adam and I make. We've released a new game here pretty recently in our new zine, Snarl, so check all of that out down below. And of course, there's our Patreon, focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. As always, though, I thank you so much for watching this one, and we'll see you next time.